Hi, my name is Tristan. How did George Washington make his money?
Tristan, that's a great question. How did George Washington make his money? And there are three things I want to talk to you about. One, George Washington, the landowner. Two, George Washington, the soldier. And three, George Washington, the politician. Let's talk about land ownership for a moment. In the 18th century, land was the basis of wealth in North America. You had to own land and then make it productive. You had to grow crops. You had to raise animals. You had to sell those crops and animals at market in order to generate wealth from that land. And George Washington acquired land in a number of ways, primarily through inheritance, both from his own family and also land that was brought to the marriage when he married Martha in 1759. Washington also received land as a kind of currency. When he was a soldier in the 1750s, he received land as a compensation for his service in the 7 Years' War. And this land was located in what became the states of Ohio and West Virginia. But that land had to be worked by somebody, and in the 18th century, when slavery was legal in North America, that land was worked by enslaved peoples here at Mount Vernon and on the other plantations Washington owned in Virginia. The slaves grew the crops, they raised the animals, they helped prepare them to sell them at market, and then Washington and his representatives sold those goods across the Atlantic to England using a company namely called Robert Carey and Company. Now, when Washington is a younger man, he's growing tobacco, and he continues to grow tobacco through much of his early years in the 1750s and 1760s. But by about the 1770s, and certainly by the time the Revolutionary War is over, it becomes very clear that tobacco isn't the moneymaker it used to be. And so Washington begins to diversify his crops into things like wheat, other kinds of grains that will become more profitable and won't wear out the soil as quickly as tobacco would. Now, one of the other ways that George Washington made money was his service in wars. Now, very famously in the Revolutionary War, General Washington swore off a compensation. He only accepted expenses from the Continental Congress, so he didn't draw a salary. But in the 1750s, when he was a soldier in the Virginia provincial regiments, he did draw a little bit of a salary, and so that was one of the ways in which he also made some money. And the final way we can think about George Washington making money, besides land and besides being a soldier, is as a politician. Washington served in the House of Burgesses in the colonial period and later served as the President of the United States in the late 1780s and early 1790s. And from those services, he drew compensation as well. And so what Washington tried to do for most of his life was try to find ways to diversify his income stream. So if there's one big lesson you can take away from this, Tristan, is have a diversified income stream. Think about different kinds of ways you can make money besides your primary form of income. It's a good financial lesson in the 18th century. It's a good financial lesson in the 21st.
Click the subscribe button below and the bell icon to get notifications for new videos about George Washington and behind-the-scenes work at Mount Vernon.